Okay, so now we're recording. So greetings from Tokyo. This is Daisuke, and today I am very proud and very honored to welcome another guest. And today we have the one, the only Aaron West. Aaron West is a very dear friend of mine, and he is also a Criterion fan, a Criterion expert, and he shows this through many forms online. But one of the great ways that he does this, one of the many great ways that he does this, is through his podcasting work. And in particular, he has a show, which is a great podcast called Criterion Now, but that is but one of his many endeavors online. But it's a great show nonetheless. It's a fantastic show. Criterion Now, which is a great show for Criterion lovers and people who are interested in recent releases and Criterion gossip and instant reactions and the like. But before I continue, let me
Gossip.
now once again welcome our dear friend Aaron West to the channel. So thank you very much, Aaron, and greetings from Tokyo.
Greetings from Columbia, South Carolina, Southeast. Hotspot for coronavirus these days.
Yeah.
but a lot of time to watch movies, so we'll take it, sort of. Good to talk to you. I think this is a great idea that you're doing this. Honored to be selected to talk with you about film or whatever you want to talk about. So hello to Daisuke's YouTube followers. Probably some of you know me, or of course they all know you. I'm in my Criterion room, which is something I never do. I actually, just because this is like where I grab my movies to watch, and this is a lot of work actually, just to keep it up. In fact, I shelved today just so I wouldn't have anything hanging out. So you can see, I don't know if you can see behind me, but that's all the Criterions. And then there's some to the left is arrows. I know you have a lot of these as well. Plus you have laser discs. And yeah, how many are in your collection, Daisuke?
Oh, I have no idea, to be perfectly honest. It's quite a lot, but not as much as other people. Because of
Okay,
space, I do have
right.
quite a number, but I do have some spacing limitations where I'm at, so it's a little bit difficult to get any new ones. But I notice also in the back you also have, I think, indicator and
Yes, yes. It's hard for me to see behind me, but yeah, indicators over there.
hmm,
Arrow. Well, Criterion is on this side, and then it goes to the middle shelf, and then my region B stuff is mostly over here. I had to double shelf that because just for space, as you mentioned. So I have a lot of arrows, indicator, Masters of Cinema, and then I don't know if you can see further down. There's even more. Um, kind of a bummer. I mean, bummer. This is a good problem to have. But as I was, so I completed these shelves. These are all built-ins. It was a completed them. I think it was late last year. Is that right? And so I buy them all as they come out, and I watch them. And when I watch them, they go back on the shelf. And so I wasn't as I guess I wasn't doing that shelving as frequently as I could have. So there was a big stack right there, about 2 stacks yay high of Criterion. So I shelved them today, and I realized that I've run out of space. So I'm gonna have to start double shelving. This is so dorky. So what I've done, I don't know if you can see, they're alphabetical by film. The upper left are the ones that I haven't rewatched in their Criterions yet. So before I double shelf those, I'm gonna rewatch Battle of Algiers, 8.5. I don't know what else is there. Hazard Balthazar. So yeah, that's why I did it, to watch the movies. So have you watched anything interesting lately, Daisuke?
At the moment, I am just finishing going through the recent release of Criterion's Tokyo Olympiad that just arrived
Oh, okay.
in the mail a few days ago, and I'm still waiting to receive Come and See. That hasn't arrived yet. I'm anticipating that very much.
Yeah, I just got that. Oh, in fact, we were going to watch it over. It was a holiday weekend here. We were going to watch it, so it didn't happen. Did you get Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
Yes, I did, and it was the first time I had seen it, and it
Oh,
was, oh my goodness, I was so overwhelmed. I was
me too.
amazing. Oh,
Remarkable. And yeah, I don't want to spoil it for anybody that hasn't seen it. But I'll just say that it's a really special movie in that it does not use a lot of music, and it's not manipulative. It uses the character situations and the acting in order to, I guess, convey the emotions and the dynamic between each other extremely effectively. But there are just a couple scenes with music, actually three, um, and they really pay off. And yeah, just a beautiful looking film. Yeah, just yeah, I was bowled over by that one. So still kind of unraveling it a little bit. So
I,
you loved it as well?
yes, and I love the way you described it. You said it's not manipulative, but it lets the actors in the world,
Hmm.
it gives them the freedom and the time to grow and
Hmm.
develop. I like that. Yeah, I agree 100%. It was I had heard a lot about it, of course, from a lot of people, but I hadn't had the opportunity to see it until the Criterion release, and so I was very impressed with that, and the supplements were quite good, and but the presentation was just and the film itself was really
Hmm.
remarkable, and it's still resonating with me even now, and so yeah, I
Same,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
this is one I think I'll revisit many times in the years to come. So it's nice to have a such a powerful movie come out on Criterion close to its theatrical life. So yeah, it'll be treasured. I mean, I saw you had a video on the cameraman. I haven't seen that, but that was a special release. I mean, I haven't watched your video of it yet. Yeah, I think I just saw it on your channel. It's tough to find time to watch videos when you're stuck at home and you have all these criterions. So
no,
so I'm sorry, Daisuke.
no. I'm not offended at all. In fact, it's important to watch the films. I agree. Yeah, watch the films. People make so many great YouTube videos. So watch them. I'm just the videos will still be around anytime. So no worries. There's no rush with that.
Look,
But I appreciate it all the same. Thank you.
we have you. You're subscribed to our TV. We have a large TV, and
Uh,
YouTube or YouTube Samsung Smart TV will always default to Dice K. So just imagine yourself in 70 inches.
oh,
You dominate our living room. It's great.
you're
So
too
it's like
kind.
it's like we are wearing your glasses with you. They're that close. But no, you're a treasure, Daisuke, and thanks for all you've done for the communities and the groups, social media. So yeah,
Oh.
it's
Not at all, not at all. I'm just very honored to be to be considered a part of the community. And I guess, that's a good segue into my next question is about you,
mhm,
Aaron, which is you are obviously very passionate and about Criterion and about cinema and about physical media in general. And we can tell that, of course, by the shelves
mhm,
in the
sure.
background there, but also you're talking about Criterion and you have a podcast called Criterion Now. And so I
Hmm.
just was wondering, just very, what were some of the films that you were watching when you were younger? What were some of those moments that you experienced in cinema that led you to become the film fan and the film expert that you are today? I think a lot of people would be interested to hear a little bit about
Well,
your background in that, and to hear about what were those films or those events that led up to the Aaron that we know and love today.
that's a good question. That's a big question. That's one of those. I can't give you just a two-word answer.
Sure.
What, and I've talked about it before, but so well, I think my father. My father was well. He's not nearly the film fan I am now. In fact, I don't know that he realized what he, well, no pun intended, but what he birthed. So, but when I was a kid, he would take me, and I was a child of the '80s. That was during my formative years where I was going to movies, understanding themes, and so he would take me to the multiplex. But and then I think we saw our share of uh, action movies, and we saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. One thing they showed me The Shining when I was that was in theaters. I was 8. That was they regretted that one for a little while. I loved it, although it took me a while to not be afraid anymore. But it's one of my favorite movies of all time now. Although that I don't think that's connected with the cinephilia. So we would go to see. I know he's a controversial figure, but back in the day, we would see a lot of Woody Allen films, and I remember watching in the theaters, Hannah and her sisters. I remember watching Zelig. It's a strange movie, but that's when my dad took to me, so that's kind of one of those faux documentaries. And then my dad, I think I've shared this with you. My dad bought a Laserdisc player. My dad was always a hi-fi guy, so that probably has passed down to me a little bit. And well, first off, he didn't always make the best choices. He went Betamax when the world went VHS, and so he still had Betamax for a couple years. And trying to track down movies for that was not easy. But he did have a Laserdisc player. He was one of the early adopters, and so he did buy Criterion selections. And as in my late teen years, when I was hanging out at home, I would pop one on, and he didn't tend to go for like the extreme art house. One I remember distinctly, and I don't know if it was Criterion or not, was The Player. And I just remember that a great film about film, which of course is I have Criterion Blu-ray now. And so through him, I saw a lot. And then as the years went on, I kept on watching films. I think for me though, breaking away from my father, this is not Criterion speaking, but is Barton Fink by the Coen brothers. So that was the true art film that I watched. That and I know compared to some of the stuff that I've already mentioned, it's I don't know, it's still very much an art film, and there's a lot of symbolism, but and I still love the film, but that's the one that really kind of haunted me and made me want to dig into a little deeper. So that was, and then I got into more of course Coen Brothers films as they made films, and eventually I don't remember the gateway to foreign films. It was probably, well, I hate to say it was probably, I shouldn't hate to say it because he's a master, but probably Kurosawa. I think Seven Samurai is a lot of people's gateway. So that was probably mine, although it doesn't stand out as much. And then eventually I went studied for film. And as I was studying, I learned about all these great filmmakers, and the one thing I noticed was that the best of them had this little logo on them, and so I just randomly bought DVDs and then later Blu-rays. Not a lot though, I you can probably relate. Maybe just maybe one here and there. I think at one point I sold some furniture or something on eBay, and that got me $200. So that was like 8 Criterions or something, which was a huge deal for me. And then, as you grow in your career, you get a little more disposable income. I gradually acquired more, and as you see, I have all the Criterion Blu-rays at least, and many of the DVDs. They're down there, and all the Eclipse. But it's not just about Criterion. So as you see all these on the left, and then I don't know if you can see this, but there are even more down there. Wow. I think in total there's like 25. I can't show you the whole room, but it's so yeah. There's the collector's instinct, and I'm generally pleased with everything that Criterion puts out, with some notable, very notable. If people listen to the show, exceptions, and I can get into those if you'd like. One of them is Japanese. I think you can guess.
We've spoken about this, yeah.
We have, yeah. So, but for the most part, even if I don't love the film, apologize, I'm gonna have to cough. Excuse me. Even if I don't love the film, I find the Criterion has an interesting presentation, and even if it's one I'm not excited for. So over the weekend, I watched Heaven's Gate, Michael Cimino, which is one I'd studied in class as one of the big flops of all time, and I just knew it as a production disaster who pretty much ended it for the 70s auteurs, and those filmmakers kind of changed Hollywood for the, in a lot of respects, for the worse. And I was kind of expecting a train wreck, and no pun intended, because there are trains. But what I found was a mess, but a brilliant mess. And so that's something I probably would not have seen on my own, even given its history, without Criterion. And there's, literally hundreds, over 1,000 examples, and then all the others from other labels as well. So yeah, sorry, that was a long answer.
No, no, that was great. Great, fantastic. So obviously you were into Criterions, or you knew about Criterions. You recognized Criterion logo, and also Janus Films as well. And you
Mhm,
also were watching a lot of non-English language films, as you mentioned Kurosawa, and then that led to others. So let me
mhm.
ask you then. So what were the circumstances that led you to start doing podcasting, and in particular focusing in on the types of podcasting film discussions, uh, primarily Criterion, but as you say, others, Arrow, Indicator,
Sure.
Eureka, Masters of Cinema, um, and
Hmm.
others. So what were the circumstances under which you started podcasting?
So I would say it was an extension of my. Well, I've always needed a creative outlet. So I've written, I've worked. I work in IT now, but I've had a lot of side projects, and that's just me. That's just the way I tick. I need something to kind of occupy that creative sense. And school was a big part of that. And when you go to school for film studies and you really invest yourself, I think you get a lot out of it. And then that certainly played a part in my appreciation, especially universal or international film, and also maybe informed my understanding of film. And so I did enjoy those projects, and yeah, a lot of those had Criterion discs. I did one big study on French film, and so I remember buying Army of Shadows and pouring over that. That was I bought the out of print version. Um, so uh, it's kind of a long story, but um, it started with a blog. I did so. I'll, I don't know how much time we have, but uh, I guess we have time. It started with a blog. It actually started before that. So I mentioned the disposable income, and I've told the story to people on the podcast. So my wife won a game show called Jeopardy. I don't know if you're familiar with the show, if it's popular in Japan. Alex Trebek, maybe pop culture, you might get exposed to it some. He was in the player. He was played himself. Do you know the game show?
Jeopardy, yes, yes. It's not in Japan, but when I was living
Okay.
in the States, of course, Jeopardy was a very big deal. Yes.
So it was, I guess this was going on 6 years ago, five, six, it was 2014. Yeah. So it's been a little while. And so my wife, it was just one day, and then she was second the next day. But that's a nice bit of cash. And I won't go into this as much, but I was also dealing with a disability, and so I had a lot of time. So I remember on our way home from the airport, having probably a couple hundred Criterions at that point. I asked my wife, um, you know what? We have all this money. Can I just buy the entire Criterion collection? And she said yes. And so I again, I had a disability, which I'm fine now, but for a couple of years, I needed a creative outlet. So I watched films. In fact, Mark Herney, if he watches this, will remember this all too well. Um, so I was blogging about the films as I watched them. It's still up there at CriterionBlues.com, and what I would just write really a review. I would dig in a little bit, try to isolate the themes, and maybe somewhere between a review and an essay. But I would also go into the features, and I think I even gave them a rating. So yeah, I guess more of a review. And my goal was my project was to eventually review all of them in the collection, which is pretty ambitious. At that point, we were probably at maybe spine 500 or so when I started that. Then I met Mark Herney. So fans of the show will know Mark. He was doing another show at the time, and he was a special guest, and he went on a show. It was called first time watchers, and where they would just, for the first time, they would watch a film and then digest it. And this is a weird segment for that type of format, but he would go on every month or two and he would do a segment on Criterions, and it was really, really good. And we had become sort of online friends, sort of like you and I have in the years since. So for quite a while, and he has a great voice, as you've heard. I can't do it. Very, very deep.
Nice.
Can't do it at all.
Nice.
Nice. Nice.
Yes.
So Mark, I was like, hey, we're friends. We love Criterions. Let's podcast. And he was all in. And so we started with Criterion Close-Up, which was supposed to be a close-up into a Criterion topic. So sometimes it would just be one disc. Our inaugural episode was on the Rose. That was actually a trial, which we released later because we decided it was not good enough. And then over time, we thought, okay, well, people can deal with us when we're bad. We'll let you hear it. So our first official was broadcast news. And then later we got deeper into topics. So we would generally do a topic and then we would dive into, like, say, a period in film. And sometimes we actually had multi-parts. We were doing a big thing on French cinema. So we did a lot on Jean Renoir, and a lot of 1930s cinema, Duvivier. I think we did, if we didn't cover Marcel Carnet, we were going to. I've had, a whole lot of topics. Too many to mention. I think we got up to episode 62, and we had some special celebrity guests too. So I remember we had, Alex Cox was probably their first big one. And that was a lot of fun. And we had some others. And then most recently we had, I think that was Now, we had Matthew Modine. That was on Criterion Now. So that was a lot of fun. But it also, and again, I mentioned I had a lot of free time. I had a disability. So we were putting these out, and I was doing a lot of the prep work. Mark would watch the films. I'm not going to take it away from Mark. He did a ton of work as well. But I was watching the films and doing the editing, and so it was a great way to occupy this time. And so, it was probably, at least, if it wasn't every week, it was every other week for the first good while. And then as I recovered, we couldn't keep up that pace, and then after episode 50 or so, maybe even 40 or so, even just a deep dive into a film was too much, and so. And then CriterionCast, Criterion Close-Up had joined that network at some point. And that's when our good friend Ryan Gallagher was quit podcasting. And I don't know if your listeners, your viewers know CriterionCast, but that's been around for 10 years, I think. And so that's a huge network. Ryan Gallagher, David Blakesley, Keith Enright, Trevor Barrett, Josh Brunsting, Scott Nye, Arik Devins, and then before there have been many. There was Moise Chilan, too many to name. Lots of people, lots of great talent involved with that. So it was an honor to be part of that network. But Ryan had to scale back his podcastings, and what was interesting is I was already going to pitch rather than doing a deep dive into a topic, I was already pitching a show called Criterion Now that was going to be a variety show, is the way I pitched it. And we were just going to talk about, and it wasn't going to be news and new releases, because CriterionCast had a show called The Newsstand that covered that, which I loved to listen to and to be on. Yeah, great show.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, so that went away, and the timing just kind of worked out that I'm not going to say we took that baton, but we covered a lot of the same material. So I won't say the Criterion Now replaced the Newsstand, and that was never the intent, but rather it just kind of incorporated that content in there. And so rather than just talk about, say, what we talked about at the beginning, the cameraman and Portrait of a Lady on Fire, we would then talk about Barnes and Noble sale. We talk about the announcements as they come out, and so when we eventually, actually, that show grew to be relatively popular in our our little circles, and we're now up to episode 109 was the last one. So that was with our good friend Will Remmers and Brad McDermott. Go listen. I think that was their best appearance on the show, bar none. And they've had many. So yeah, that's it. And I will say, Close-Up is the feed is offline right now. I have to put it back on, but it'll be back.
Are there ways for people to listen in? I would assume maybe through Criterion Cast's web page. Maybe there would be links to past episodes in case people are tuning in for the first time and curious about the episodes. Is that possible?
Maybe I'll have to check. We haven't gotten into the 25th frame, but
yeah.
we never fully transferred that feed back over. So I think not. I think they might not work from Criterion Cast, but they will at some point. The web pages are definitely there. I would test right now, but we're having a conversation. So
well, I'll do my best to put all the links to everything that's available as of now in the description box of this video. So they will be available, I think, through iTunes, I think, or Apple Podcasts, I think it's what it's called, and the like. But I'll put all the information to the extent available in the description box ago. So that's Criterion Now. And before we go on, could you just show us your T-shirt? What's the T-shirt that you're wearing right now?
Oh wow!
yeah. What is
Did
this?
You see? Yeah. So this is a Criterion Cast. So this is the logo of the I guess the mothership as of now. So that's they had put out some T-shirts a few years ago, and I think I was even part of the network, but I don't know why. I have no excuse. I was either cheap or wasn't paying attention, and I didn't get one of the first ones. And then Ryan put some new shirts out that. And I think the old ones were white and black, so blue is even better. So he gave a number of choices of colors. So Ryan, if you're watching, maybe do that some other time. I will definitely buy another shirt, different color this time, maybe teal.
And what was the Criterion Cast also Criterion Cast also has its own podcast network, and it has I think it has many shows there, and so and you're obviously a part of that now, right?
Yes.
So a very important component of a huge podcasting network, Criterion's, but also other shows. And so Criterion Cast information will also be in the description box below. So I'm assuming people know Criterion Cast already, but just in case there is someone out there who doesn't know. Yes, I know it's huge, absolutely huge. But just in case anyone coming to this video for the first time and is curious about Criterion Cast, please check it out. All the information will be below. I strongly recommend it. It is fantastic. And as Aaron says, it has been around and they really know their stuff. And the podcast episodes are still going on strong. Fantastic stuff. So thank you.
And that's why that's why it's such an honor, is because I was a fan of them first. They were they hooked me into the Criterion this universe and into the social community as well. And we can get into that if you'd like. But I love David Blakesley, Trevor Barrett. Actually, they just launched a new show about Criterion box sets, which and I think at some point I'll probably participate in that in some capacity. So great people. They've all become great friends, and I kind of feel like it's even that we're creating content, it's more just a group of really great people, and that's extended to, and that's where I think the community is important. Is we have, I've made probably hundreds of people I would generally call friends. Maybe not. I'm not going to have every single one of them over for drinks. You can't all stay at my house when you're in America, but we definitely would watch a film together. In fact, I've been out of town a few times and been able to catch films with some people that I've met through these podcasts. So I had Toronto, New York, of course, a couple times, and got to meet Dave Eves and a lot of other people, James Hancock. wanted to go to Austin someday, and hopefully COVID will allow. We'll start that tour back up and meet people. Speaking of which, I was going to go to Tokyo.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I remember
yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah, and the invitation is always open, of course, of course. Again, when everything is calmed down, and the world is free from
hmm
this current situation, of course, the invitation is
hmm
always open. So I look forward to that very much, and to hear your conversations face to face, because I have a lot
yeah.
to learn from you.
And we'll have a drink when it's not morning for you. And I was going
Yeah.
to prepare a drink for this, but I didn't want to do that to you at 8 in
No,
the
I don't
morning. Or
mind. No, I don't mind. No, no, please, please go ahead. It's your evening, so please, please,
well,
please
thank you,
relax.
thank you.
You deserve it, my
I,
friend. You deserve it.
I'm good with water. Although this could be vodka, you don't know. You
Uh,
probably would know by the way I'm speaking.
no, please go ahead. Yeah, and so with your podcasting, I also want to touch upon something that you did bring up, and we did speak about earlier beforehand, which
hmm
is you also focused in for a good period of time on what was known as the 25th frame. And
hmm
so, just for anyone who isn't familiar with that or what it was, because it does appear every now and again, and so people might be curious as to what this. Could you just briefly explain what that was and what
Yeah.
ended up happening? I suppose.
Well, you were on it. In fact, your logo. Thank you. Thanks to Mr. Dougman Cambridge
Yes.
was part of that. So I think we were thrilled to have you. So
It was an
yeah,
honor, a
this
real great
was
honor.
likewise. So really the intention was to create sort of. So we had all these great people, and they're. So that's one thing about now is we always have different guests, and some of the challenges trying you love all these people, so I would love to have you back on, but trying to find a date and time that works with my schedule is tough. So can't always, but meanwhile you meet other podcasts, and we all had kind of similar, I, I wouldn't say themes, but similar, yeah, a little bit similar aesthetics for the most part. And then there was Doug McCambridge, who had his weird '80s movies podcast. I love you, Doug. Um, so we sort of gathered together, and it was really me and Cole Roulaine from the Magic Lantern podcast that started it. And the goal was to create a podcast network of like-minded shows, and really to support each other. And this was financially as well as creatively. So we did a lot. I really think that in a lot of respects, the project was a major success. So what we did is we moved all these podcasts into one feed. And again, this was kind of all my favorite podcasts, CriterionCast notwithstanding. So it made it easier for me. I just had to keep that one feed, and I had pretty much, maybe not all, but the majority of my film related podcasts. And we had some bigger names as well. We had Alicia Malone had joined, and with her podcast. Also, I would say he's big now, especially is Brian Sauer. So he was from Pure Cinema, and also formerly of Off the Shelf, and another terrific Criterion Cast show that is not around, unfortunately. So that went, a good year, and we also we had a Patreon, and we supported each other financially. So if we would I would give equipment out to people that needed it. Sometimes we just support people with sometimes discs for content, and we also collectively paid for all the overhead with hosting and all that. We had a big hosting account, so we
And I
tried to
don't
do
mean
some
to.
advertising.
Oh yeah, and I don't mean to
Please, yes,
interrupt you, but also you also were very supportive of people trying to start new shows as well.
yes,
And
yes.
I'll give the example of our dear friend Josh Hornbeck, and
Yes, great
Criterion
example.
Channel Surfing. Yes, it's a
Hmm.
podcast which is devoted to the Criterion Channel streaming service. And I remember that
Hmm.
started. My understanding was you and maybe some other people, you had supported him with getting it off the ground, and now
Hmm.
it's one of the go-to places for Criterion streaming service news. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, Josh. That's a great example. One of the proudest shows. I'm sure that's not the only one. I know that there are a couple others that we and then we have had some other features and that sort of thing. It, and also the finance. It became a little bit of a burden, and it was a tough decision, but had to and probably in hindsight I probably should not have made the decision for everybody, but I felt like a lot of the responsibility, whether it was intended to or not, was on my shoulders. I was managing all the finances, all that sort of thing, and doing trying to keep up with the shows and maintain good content. So I had a little time off and kind of had to unwind it, and I think for the most part people understood. It was a bitter pill because we had, I think, again, where we succeeded is we had this community that was supporting each other, going on each other's shows. And yeah, Criterion Channel Surfing is a great example of one that was started, but also people were guesting on different shows. So the Complete had different guests to talk about different directors. That was one where they just talk about one director for each season, and a number of shows. And I'd say for the most part, we came out of that okay. For a while, I burned out, so I'm not afraid to say it. It was just too much, and for a while, I kind of, as 2020 came along, hard to, anybody who predicted where they'd be in 2020 was absolute wrong. But towards the end of 2019 is when we wound down the 25th frame, and then I went on hiatus for probably about 3 or 4 months, maybe, yeah, about that. Well, because we had recorded the Modine episode in November, it didn't come out until December, but so I took a long break, and then I rejoined Criterion Cast. Ryan was gracious enough to let me host the shows there again. And again, Criterion Close-Up will be back there one day. Um, and then we had a pandemic, so all of a sudden I don't quite have more time. So it's probably still a good thing because I have a lot of local civic responsibility. I work with a lot of nonprofits and the city and so forth. So I'm involved with that, but so I probably didn't have enough to give as it is. So I would have, in fact, I would be even more burned out. I probably wouldn't be podcasting if I had kept that up. But it was a great idea, a great concept. I think my YouTube still says 25th frame, so I haven't figured out how to remove that. So if you see me like your stuff, and you see the 25th frame, you're not. It's not a ghost. It's just me. So.
And just to give people who might not know just a clearer idea, so what what is the type of work that goes into podcasting, recording
Mm,
episodes? Because there's the recording episodes and preparing that aspect, but also on top of that, you had additional responsibilities when you were doing the
mhm,
25th frame in terms of management, in terms of
mhm.
I don't know, like there was a money flow, but I don't know if people if people realize, and I'm sure a lot of people do, but podcast is podcasting a huge money maker, that sort of thing, or could you give us a little bit of insight into the podcasting, like making of documentary, like what goes into podcasting, and what were some of the things that you felt, the good things and the bad things that you felt during your time when you were really into it up to the end of 2019?
Mhm. So your first question, can pods make money? The answer is yes. I never got into it for the money. For me, as I alluded to earlier, it was all about the creative outlet, and I'm lucky enough to have a job that I love that takes care of me. So, and I'm fortunately still employed during a pandemic. So I'm very, very grateful. That's not lost on me. So even before we had the 25th frame, we did start a Patreon, and I didn't really need the money. So I really, the benefit or the value of the Patreon for me was to give out um, unedited content. So that way I would record a show with you, and then 10 minutes after finishing it, it would be listen to. So Criterion Now was truly now for podcasting, and I think I made it for $3 a month. And then what I did with the rest of the money prior to the 25th frame is I had all these guests, so I would just try to buy them equipment. And I remember even then I had a spreadsheet. I think that I did buy myself a microphone with it, and I bought myself some software. But you know, a number of the guests that we have, I won't mention the names, but we Criterion Now bought a lot of them microphones. So I think that's benefited everybody within these podcasting circles. But the thing is, I could have made more money from it, and so I think you can. Now, I don't think you can actually maintain a living unless, you know, with a niche subject like this. Now, if you're going to go do one of the popular, if you're going to do a show on, like, say, true crime is very big sometimes, or, you know, maybe about a TV show that's really popular. I think some of those people do full time. You know, if you're Joe Rogan, you can make plenty of money. But I think the reason you should do it is for passion for the subject, just because you enjoy whatever you're talking about. And I think that actually bears, you know, if you enjoy what you're talking about and you know something about it, and I think people will come. So the Patreon did grow, and we were bringing in a considerable amount of money. I would say it's probably the equivalent of a entry-level job. And so and then it grew under the 25th frame because then the Patreon grew to incorporate all the shows. And so yeah, that would just be more mouths to feed, and we would collectively try to use the money to try to grow the network. Advertising is really difficult. We tried some things, and it's hard to reach people. But as for the work involved of just maintaining a podcast, I imagine it's not too dissimilar from what you do with YouTube. I mean, you have to. There is some work in coordination, schedules, reserving the time. You need to, and you need the technology. You need the equipment, at least passable equipment to make it sound. You know, frankly, I because I edit, I'm probably a little more sensitive to sound quality. But I think for most listeners, you know, the regular mics are just fine. For me, the editing is the tough part, and so that's why I loved having that. So the Patreon would buy me a week or so. So in fact, as we speak, I have Masters of Cinema Now episode 1 to edit that I've yet, and I think it was recorded about 2 months ago. So although a lot's happened in the world since, so and again, that's occupied my time. So I would say, if I were to quantify it, the 25th frame did take a lot, and a lot of it was, and I realized this after the fact, is people didn't realize the amount I was putting into it. And I don't want to take away, everybody was putting in a little bit. And that's on me. I probably didn't communicate with people that I was spending time doing this and that and this and that, or what was competing for my time that I was not meeting. Like, you know, I have a great marriage, love my wife, and that was never at risk, but I could have spent more time with her. So I think maybe she appreciated me ending that. But yeah, now it's not too much time. Although I do it less frequently now, just because I don't have as much capacity. So it's almost become a monthly show. I think in July we might have 2 episodes, because we're going to do we might do like a sort of intermediate episode where we talk about the news and the sale and all that, and then we'll talk about the October announcements when they come out, and then we're going to talk about some of the best of the year so far, sort of the midway point of Criterion, which has been a stellar year, and there's a lot more to come. I mean, wow.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah,
probably
thank you so much for that.
it.
No, thank you so much, and I appreciate your honesty about this. And you know, I before we go on, let me just say, on a personal note, you know, I thought that I was part of it, but I was a YouTube channel, so I was occupying this
right.
this sort of unique sphere, as it were. And this is all inside baseball talk for a moment, but I
A little
was,
bit, yeah, a little
yeah,
bit.
I always thought, I was always like, oh, whatever works for everyone is fine with me, that kind of attitude. And so I
Mm-hmm,
was more of the passive side of things. So I don't know if, like, it was hard for me to figure out exactly how to best approach it.
mm-hmm,
And I think I was always thinking about trying to expand more exposure in the YouTube space, but
mm-hmm,
it just didn't work out, as it were. But of course, that doesn't mean that it's not available to people now. I mean, I'm always
mm-hmm,
I think that podcasting is really wonderful, and also there is also I think a lot of people who watch YouTube. So there are many people who also listen to podcasts, but there are also people who are not
mm-hmm.
familiar oftentimes with podcasting, and I think it's for some people it can be a new opportunity for exploration. And so in any event, I am so supportive of your endeavors with the show, and that goes for
Mm-hmm.
all of our colleagues and friends, and I'll try to list all of their shows now in the
That would
description
be
box
great.
below.
Yeah.
And because
Um.
everyone is doing such great work, and I
Mm-hmm.
recommend it wholeheartedly. And your show as well. Incidentally, what you said you're working on the Masters of Cinema episode now? Do you have any? And you said there might be one or two episodes in July, so that's this month. So,
Mm-hmm.
without giving away too much, do you have any plans as to when the next episode might be up, just in case people might be interested in tuning in?
So yeah, we all, sometimes we'll do these little. And by the way, just to stay, just to finish the inside baseball part. I think you're always eternally humble, which I love and appreciate. But sometimes to your sometimes you don't give yourself enough credit. But I think you were a vital part of 25th Frame. Maybe not in the day to day, but you were an advocate and you a supporter and a champion, and I think that was a big part of what we were doing. So thank you for that. And uh, and we did want to expand into more videos. The problem is we never found another Dice K. So if we have 10 Dice Ks, we wanted to it not to just be podcasts, but just to be all sorts of film content. And so yeah, if we had found 10 more Dice Ks, we might still be around. But anyway, so go forward. So your question was about what's coming up, or
Yeah.
when oh, the Masters of Cinema.
No, the
Yeah.
what's the
So
next
yeah,
episode? Yeah, that will be up.
so
What
we're
when?
recording. You know, we're recording the week after next about. So that will be after the October announcements. So I'll share that, and then we're gonna cover October announcements and also just sort of the best of the year so far in Criterion up till mid-July. I've been keeping up with the discs. I can tell you have as well. And but that's going to be with me, David Blakesley, and Trevor Barrett. So speaking of the, I believe their new show is called Inside the box set shows. But it's always a pleasure talking to them, and they also keep up with these releases as they come out. So always a pleasure to have them. And what I might do is I might record. The thing is that's a big topic, so to cover all that and the releases. So I might just have an intermediate quick show. I'm going to try to do one next weekend and just talk about what's going on. And some of it I just like to talk about movies we've seen. Like I just mentioned Heaven's Gate, and today I watched a Constant Forge, the documentary with about John Cassavetes. So Cassavetes is a master worth hours upon hours of content. Frankly, the documentary was hours upon hours of content. It was 3.5 hours, pretty long one. And then I rewatched The Life Aquatic. So Wes Anderson. It's always fun to talk about what you're watching lately with others who share that enthusiasm. So yeah. Potentially an in-between episode if I can find the time. So.
And
And I
so,
think you'll come at some point. Yeah.
oh, please, one of my great joys would be to be able to talk with you and everyone else on the show again. So yes, if we can find the time, yes, I'd love to. It would be my pleasure.
Hmm.
Such a
I'm
great
sure we
honor.
can. We'll
Oh,
definitely do it. Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
talk
Love having
afterwards.
you.
Yes.
We
So
we will. Yeah. So
and so in the comments or in what you said, you mentioned the sale. You said the two words, the sale. So could
the
you let
sale,
us,
yeah.
yeah, could you let us know what what you've heard about the, I mean, now this is going to go up. This is now the July 7th, and where you are, it's July
Hmm.
6th. And so maybe in a few days, what we're about to say might become moot points. But
It probably will be, yeah.
but
Um,
just for right now,
hmm.
what have you heard about the Barnes and Noble sale?
So yeah, what I've heard, I don't know when the episode will go up, if it'll go up in the next day or two, but usually the Barnes and Noble sale starts at the beginning of July and lasts throughout the month. Um, and this year we had some mixed messages. In fact, I recorded my Last Now episode, and we talked about how there might not be a sale, and then I had to re-record an intro because by the time the editing was completed, it looked like there was going to be one. So the rumor is that there's going to be one beginning July 10th, which makes sense because that's right before the big Bruce Lee set comes out, and then there are other great films coming out. That Lady Eve is coming out the same day, I believe, and War of the Worlds will be just prior to that. And then there's others, and then towards the end of that month, I don't know how long Barnes and Noble will continue with the sale, but the Agnes Varda set is first. I think it's the first or second week of August. I want to say second week, so maybe in that. So the hope is that it'll extend until that date. So you'll get that. Um, we just prior to recording, the Criterion was kind enough to send us an emails or send me an email because I had pre-ordered. I didn't know that the sale was happening, so I had pre-ordered the Bruce Lee set from them, and it wasn't terribly expensive. And I used one of my $50 gift vouchers, so yes, I could use that on something else. But you know what? It's just too much of a pain to cancel and get it back. So I also used some other gift vouchers too. So essentially, it's not really free, but to me, it feels like Bruce Lee is free. So I'm going to keep that order. But I think it's great that as a company, I think they really are, um, you know, they do a good job of maintaining their brand, maintaining their integrity, uh, kind of, I guess, fanning the flames of that collective instinct. So they definitely have an audience, but also you know they continue to curate and create these conversations about films that we wouldn't otherwise discover. So it's great that they have that loyal following, but it's also great that they're a good company. And so the point of today's notification was that, hey, you ordered Bruce Lee, thanks a lot, it's going to ship next week, but you know what? There's going to be a Barnes and Noble sale. So if you want to make any changes, we don't care. You know, as long as you buy it, you buy it. So I thought that was very, very gracious of them to give you the out. Which you know, if it was 50% off and you missed out on that, I could see people be disappointed. So, but sticking with it. Are you buying from Barnes and Noble these days?
Not these days, although never say never. Nothing
Okay.
against Barnes and Noble or anything like that, but I usually have a long wait time for
Mm,
delivery when I order through Barnes and Noble in the past. And so,
interesting.
yeah, so
Okay.
and it's usually, and so because of that, I usually like to forego that. And
Hmm.
again, that's just in the past. Perhaps they've improved their shipping times since then. And so if so,
Hmm.
that's wonderful. But I have a kind of a system now, and so I'm okay with that. But I'm always very supportive of this moment, and I know people are looking forward to this very much because Criterion releases can
Hmm.
become very expensive, and especially when we're getting
Oh,
into the sets and
yes, they,
things of that sort. So
yes,
this is a great time.
yes,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
can.
yeah,
There's a lot of money in this room.
yeah,
Yeah, well, you have been getting them pretty quickly. So to
yeah.
me, that's almost more important. It's I guess I just you know I want I want to eat my cake before the candles are.
Yeah.
So that's one thing with ordering directly from Criterion is sometimes you'll get them a day early, and if you're lucky, sometimes you'll get them on the weekend. So they come out on a Tuesday, and if you're lucky, you get them on a Saturday here. Um, so I think it's fun to be. you use the phrase zeitgeist, so or just now our podcast, but to be consuming it as it comes out and
Yeah.
to keep up with that, which is not always easy, especially when they release these big box sets. I'm
So are
still
you?
working on Bergman.
Ah, the Ingmar Bergman Cinema. Yes, it's a classic now. It's one of the milestones of
Yeah,
their releases. Yeah, yeah. Huh.
I have it right here, as a matter of fact, and I have it open because I'm this is so I'm this much away. So the one page and then Fanny Alexander.
Well, that's
So I
great.
figure I have until Christmas because Christmas seems like the time to watch Fanny and Alexander, and then all the special features. And guess what? We're going to do an episode on that,
Oh,
and it might be Criterion Close-Up. So to kind of wrap up the Bergman box set, I
oh,
think he deserves it. Um,
that's
Same with
wonderful.
Agnes Varda. I think we'll end up covering all the greats.
And what do you have any plans as to? Are you going to make any purchases yourself at the Barnes and Noble sale? If so, are there any titles that you have in mind, or perhaps maybe just play it by ear, as it were?
So that's one of the boring parts of being complete. And I don't know if you, I think you're complete as well, right? Having all the Blu-rays is you have fewer to buy. So you mentioned earlier Tokyo Olympiad. I haven't bought that because I have it on the actually you can probably see it up there.
Yeah.
I have it on the Olympic set, and so I will get the special edition, but I'm not in a hurry to watch it. So I'll probably actually wait for a flash sale for that, just because, I want Barnes and Noble to succeed as a business. I kind of wonder about their future. In fact, I think we were about ready to, um, write them off. I hate to say it, but retail is very challenged, and especially in the pandemic with brick and mortar, and they're not doing very well digitally or online. But still, I like to order from Criterion. So Criterion will usually have a flash sale in October. And so what I do with that, this is, if you want to get into my dorky buying patterns, is I tend to buy the upgrades that I'm not really too enthusiastic about. So I'm going to wait to get Tokyo Olympiad there. I'll also probably get the Jules Dassin Brute Force and what's the other one? The New York
Naked,
one, Naked City. Yes.
Naked City, yes.
Yeah. So and maybe a couple others, but the new ones I like to get as they come.
Mm. And speaking of the new releases, you had mentioned how you were impressed with the Criterion releases thus far. And so now we're in July. And so are there any releases
Keep talking.
now?
I'm change
Sure,
headphones.
sure. Are there any releases that you've had, or are there any new releases this year that have been particularly impressive to you? Are there any standouts as far as new releases go for this year?
Yes. By the way, can you hear me? Well, I'm about to not be able to hear you.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, 1 second.
Sure.
My
Take your time.
earpod's about to die.
I'm not so good with editing, so it's not a problem. So I
apologies, listeners or watchers.
So can you hear me okay?
I hear you great. The one thing about these are they're noise canceling, so I can't hear myself that great, but I got used to talking. I might be talking louder now. I can't tell. You tell me.
No problem. And I just wanted to ask you also is what were some of the standout releases from Criterion in 2020 thus far for you? Now we're in July, and so we're about at the halfway point. So what were some of the standout releases for you this year so far?
So I would say, can you hear me still? Okay, good. I would, well, we already talked about the cameraman. That was really, really impressive. And I'm trying to remember, the Cremator was fantastic. Have you caught that one yet? Kind of a dark, I love any Czech film. This was, I want to say dark, I mean, extremely dark, just tonally in general, but there was also a little bit of black humor in there as well. And I don't give too much away because it's about a cremator who, kind of the unreliable narrator a little bit. pulling up Criterion's website so I can remember what came out. So that was probably one of my favorite discoveries. But there's always so much. Just looking at what's recent. Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Eric Romaire's greatest Six Moral Tales. So even though that's I had that on DVD, I hadn't watched them in a long time. So I've already rewatched every single one of them, and I watched finally watched the short films. And Destiny Rise Again. This only goes back so far. So yeah, good question. I don't remember what came out this year because I just filed them on the shelf. But it's been a pretty good year. I think that for the most part, there are definitely some that I'm forgetting, but for the most part, the best releases are coming out. Notable exception is Grand Budapest Hotel, which came out about a month or two ago, and that was quite special. I think that's just a remarkable film, and really the best of Wes Anderson, as far as I'm concerned. And his films always get just fantastic treatment. I think it's just because he loves the medium. He shares so much, and I think Criterion is a good collaborator in that regard. So, do you have any favorites that I've forgotten?
The ones that you mentioned were great, and I would also add, for example, just off the top of my head, Fail Safe, the Lumet film, and also Wildlife. Paul Dano's Wildlife, which is a really beautiful emotional work, and also Scorsese shorts, just to give a few of many examples.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to shave tomorrow. So if you want, I'll record myself shaving, and that'll be hopefully I'll do a little better job.
The big shave too.
Wildlife, I watched, was it last year or the year before when that came out? I believe it was the year before, but I watched that around that time. That was when movies came to cinemas, and I did really enjoy it. And that's one that my wife wants to watch with me. So we're waiting for that. And Come and See, as previously mentioned, and just arrived. I haven't watched it yet, but I've seen it before. And I saw it on an old print that probably had been raked through the mud and shown probably 50,000 times somewhere, and then finally transferred to, I want to say I saw it on the VHS or digitally, but even then, the horror, I want to say the horror, but it's just a very, very, it's a bleak film, but it's kind of a gut-wrenching film. Don't go in expecting the Grand Budapest Hotel. It's certainly not that. But it's kind of an eye-opening film, very impactful. So highly recommended, kind of an experience that I almost want to compare it to 1917, and that's not a fair comparison. 1917 was a good movie. I don't know if you saw the Sam Mendes from last year.
Yes. The 1917. So I haven't seen it yet, but I know of it. Yes.
Oh, okay. So if your viewers have seen 1917, it's kind of like that. It's a journey. It's a journey through war, but it's up the ante as far as the horror. So it's really that type of journey and experiencing the horrors of war through a child, through a youngster. So it's very, very impactful. Have you seen Come and See?
Yes. It's one of the most powerful and disturbing films I've seen in quite some time, and I've seen the same. Perhaps it was the same. Unrestored like DVD of it, or
I think it was a DVD.
But I'm very much looking forward to. I haven't seen the restored version of this, so I'm looking forward to this very much.
Yeah. As much as I love the film, it's not one that I would. I'm not going to rewatch this every year. It's kind of like, we all make the Sallow jokes. I think Sallow is a masterpiece, and that's a topic for another time. But I'm not going to watch that I'm not going to have the family over and watch Sallow and Come and See. But it's a very special film, and yeah, I think it's probably going to. Oh, I forgot Carol Zeman's Wonderful Journeys. So that this is the stuff I have to dig in and think about for our best of the year show. But that will certainly feature prominently. That was a journey. We were about to go to Prague in a few weeks, actually 3 weeks from now. We would have been in Prague. And we were going to go to the Carol Zeman Museum. I've checked it; it's open. I just can't get there. without a long quarantine. Even with that one, I think I don't.
Yeah.
Even with that, I don't think I can get there. But one day I'll be there. So
that was a splendid. That's one of those great releases. Yes, thank you very much for mentioning that. And you also mentioned the releases that are upcoming and planned. And so, what are some of those releases that you are looking forward to the most? So now we're in July 7th, and so we know what the planned releases are up through, as of now, up through September. So what are some of those titles that we know officially will arrive that you are looking forward to the most?
As I get ready to cheat, so the easiest one is Agnes Varda. I think that's, I don't know if Fellini 100 is going to come. I think there are a lot of rumors that we'll see a Fellini box set this year. One thing I don't know, because Italy had such a time with the coronavirus earlier this year, I know that there were a lot of film restoration efforts, and I hope that didn't impact those at all. We actually lost a few people, sadly, tragically. But so yeah, that's the big one. Is Varda is just, I've not seen, remarkably, I've only seen about 7 of her films, and they've left such an impression on me. I guess there's 7 pretty important films, but she covers she covers documentary and she's a master at the narrative film, and not that she doesn't stand alone, but she also had the partnership with Demi, and so there's some documentaries about their life, and you can kind of see like Live Up Honor, if you've seen that one, and the vibrant colors that they kind of inform their style a little bit. So yeah, that's probably one. I want to say I'll probably consume that quicker than I will the Bergman. I love Bergman, but I just think that Varda will be more palatable, if that makes sense, a little more accessible. I'm just looking here. Bruce Lee is interesting. I'm curious what kind of story they tell with that. I've seen a couple of those movies. I haven't been a tremendous fan, but I think that Bruce Lee is a phenomenon of himself. So I'll be looking forward to that. Taste of Cherry by Kiarostami, Tony by Jean Renoir, Beau Travail by Claire Denis. That's one I haven't seen. That's like one of those sacred cows that I've been waiting and waiting and waiting, hoping that one day, if not Criterion, somebody would give it the fair treatment. I did not watch that old unrestored Blu-ray or DVD, if it's even had that. And then finally, The Elephant Man is going to be special. And then probably one of my favorites is Martin Scorsese's World Cinema Project, which is going to have 6 films that I've yet to see, all from different parts of the world. And of course, this is volume 3. So volume 1 and 2 were a delight. I think of this one, I think is a Peyote from, I believe it's from Mexico. I'm gonna check. Yeah, Peyote from 1980. I believe that's Mexican. So that's the one I'm looking forward to there. But the entire set looks fantastic. And that's one thing I love about Criterion is they just highlight different cultures, different geographies, different perspectives, whether women, different I guess races behind the camera. So and I think they're trying to be, they call it active curation. So yeah, I love all that.
And may I ask, what's your take on, you mentioned The Elephant Man, which I'm also looking forward to. Of course, I think comparisons arose immediately with respect to the UK release, the UHD4K release of that. So comparisons do arise. So what's your take on Criterion and 4K?
That's a good question. I was actually thinking about David Lynch because I watched, this is very random, but I watched Tetsuo for the first time. And so I thought about The Elephant Man. It's kind of like the Japanese Elephant Man. But 4K UHD, so I have a UHD player downstairs, and I do purchase a lot of new movies in UHD. I did pre-order The Flash Gordon from Arrow, which is not one of my favorite movies, but it's a lot of, it's kind of campy fun, and I think it'll be a treat. I also bought Top Gun for no reason on 4K, but no, it's hard for me to. I mean, Blu-ray is so good, especially on a good TV. that I don't know if there's really an appreciable difference between Blu-ray and 4K. Some people swear by it. I'm okay with them not releasing UHD4K. One thing I found, so for example, Midsummer is a movie I enjoyed quite a bit. You know, Midsummer
Oh
by
yes, I haven't seen Ari Aster, right?
Ari
Yeah,
Aster. Yeah. Oh,
yeah, I
you
haven't
haven't
seen
seen
it.
it?
No, but I'm I'm very bad when it comes to recent releases and watching them. But
Okay.
I've heard the critical reaction and fan reaction to that film. Yes, I know that there's a new release of that or director's cut or something. Could you
Oh
explain?
yeah, yeah. There is one coming out from A24 that's already sold out. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very divisive film. I don't know if you like horror or do you like The Wicker Man?
Yes, I do very much.
Okay, so you might like this. It's kind of folk horror like
Yeah.
that. And I loved it. It's my favorite year of last year. In fact, Portrait of a Lady on Fire is up there for one of my favorites, and among others. But Midsummer is really special. So, but they were selling it for the America. I don't even think they had a 4K, but they had a Blu-ray. Yeah, they just had the Blu-ray. Maybe they had a Blu-ray of the theatrical cut, and then the UK had a 4K of the director's cut. I could have this wrong, so forgive me. I'm not looking it up. It might have been a Blu-ray, but you could not buy them together. So what I did is I bought this Italian release that had it together, and it had the 4K, but it had the 4K of the theatrical version, and then the Blu-ray of the director's, because you just can't fit enough on the disc, including special features. So I ended up buying a 4K disc, but I wanted to see the director's cut with the extra footage, so I ended up watching the Blu-ray. But next time I'll watch it on 4K, and I'll let you know.
Oh, yes, please. I look forward to that. And because I really have to see that because a lot of people have been mentioning that film to me as well. So Midsummer. So, but I haven't seen either version or either cut. So I'll have to.
I would watch the theatrical cut first.
Okay,
Is my
theatrical cut.
suggestion. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'll see about doing that. But maybe after the kids are asleep because I don't think it's
Certainly. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So it's something
Especially the last hour. Definitely.
Okay.
In fact, all of it. Yeah. Wait for the kids to be asleep.
And you also mentioned the World Cinema Project #3 set, and I'm also very much looking forward to that. I think a lot of people are, and I think what was it? The film Pichoche, yes, and it's the film Brazil film from Babenco, right? And that's very famous.
Brazilian. Sorry, yes.
No.
Yeah,
And so, but you mentioned that, which I think is it's so. It's one of the most it's a very intense work and it's very famous but I don't know I'm not sure if it's release history, but I remember seeing it. It was available on VHS back in the day, and it's a very powerful work. But that's one of the questions I wanted to ask is with respect to World Cinema Project and box sets of this nature where we have sets that, and Bruce Lee set is also an example.
You can't see it. It's on the bottom shelf. Sorry, I was going to.
Oh, the
position the
WCD
camera
sets?
so you can see them. Yeah, they stand out on the shelf. Really great.
Oh, they're fantastic. Yeah, and they have great releases, and it's also the Blu-ray DVD format. It used to be called dual format, but that's still in keeping with the. So it'll have the same shape, it'll have the same size, dimensions, more or less. That's my understanding. So that's good for people and collectors of these sets and the like. And but I guess one of the things I was thinking about, and I wanted to get your input, was how do you feel about these releases that have that are in box sets only and that aren't necessarily broken free in physical media format anyway. So that means that we get these releases, but they're not given or they're not afforded, say, individual release treatment. I know for some people, I don't know how.
That's a great question.
I don't know how prevalent this line of thinking is, and I must admit I go back and forth on it. But some people think that the individual release affords the film the most respect and treatment. But then there are other people or other lines of thought that suggest that a set really helps to spotlight films and really give give the films enough room and to celebrate them in this huge set in this way. So I'm wondering, how do you feel about, for instance, the WCP film, the World Cinema Project films? I think they haven't been broken free from their set releases, but they're still available in the sets in all their glory. The same is true, I think, for Bruce Lee's films. Some of it's also true for not all, but some of the films in the Bergman set that you showed, and I could go on and on. But how do you feel about that? I mean, you mentioned, for instance, the very famous Brazilian film, the Babenco film, Pichocha. But yeah. So I was wondering what your thoughts about that are.
Yeah, so what's interesting is other labels do release them individually. So, for example, Arrow Films. In fact, you can see there at the very, very top, you'll see the Jacques Rivette set, and they've split that release out into so not quite individual films, but smaller segments. So that has Out One, but you can also get some of the. I'm sorry, I was confusing Romer and Rivette. Same thing though. They're now releasing them in smaller bite size. They've done that with Fassbender as well. So they had a big set and then they'll release them individually. Maybe they'll put a few of the works, like the early works, they combine those. As you mentioned, Bergman, they did release a few, Magic Flute, Virgin Spring, a handful of others. Shame was a big one. And then I guess they call it a film trilogy, but a lot of people call it the Faith trilogy. I don't know if they'll do that for Varda. So I guess you could think that makes it less accessible. You have to spend maybe $150 to $200, depending on whether you want to wait for a sale to get all these great films. So, for example, The Touch is on here, and that's a 1971, I believe, 71 feature that is probably not going to get an individual disc. So that's a great question. Is The Touch being kept from consumption because it's part of this set? Personally, I think it sets like this, they're proving their popularity. So I think that we have the Eclipse set, the Eclipse series, which had some of those lesser known titles. In fact, many of the Bergmans were on that series as well. So I think that I think this gets more films out. And in fact, a Varda set was on there too, which will be on the release. So yeah, it doesn't bother me so much. I think if I really, really wanted it, maybe I would ask my library if they get it, and they might stock them individually, assuming libraries are going to open. I don't know how they're doing with COVID, but that is one thing my local library did do with box sets. Is they, in fact, I saw that with World Cinema Project, is they would rent out the disc. So I think with World Cinema, there are 2 films per disc. So you just be able, that would be one rental. So yeah, great question. I'm fine with the way it is. But I buy everything anyway, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. Would you ever buy individual Criterion films?
Yes, I would, and I think also one of the keys to this is also the streaming service, because I think a lot of them will also be made available individually. At least that's my understanding anyway, for streaming. And so I think the key to this for a lot of people will be the streaming service. So I think that's one way to think about that going forward. And that's I think yet another great reason to at least give the Criterion channel, give it a chance if people haven't done so already. So
if I can add one more thing, there's also sometimes some licensing issues.
Yes.
So Bergman, for example, there were a couple films that they licensed specifically for this box set that they did not for the, I think The Serpent's Egg was one of those. So I believe Arrow put that out individually, and then Criterion was still able to work it out with Arrow to put it in the set. So I do like that sometimes they are able to get the rights to put that in, and you still get the best of both worlds. Now, they're still not going to put out The Touch, but at least you have The Serpent's Egg from Arrow.
And uh, as I said before, with respect to the Barnes and Noble sale, I think some of these comments might become moot in a few days. But and one of those things is we'll probably get another announcement maybe next week or so, maybe, right, because it falls around the 15th. And so I was wondering, as a way to
the week early, the week.
Yeah, what are some titles that you either think will be announced or you'd like to see announced? Either this coming month, or at least between now and the end of the year.
Well, Bringing Up Baby is the one that gets brought up a lot. There are endless. So I do tend to prefer French film. I don't know why that is, but there's a lot of French filmmakers that I don't know if they get their proper attention. So maybe some more Marcel Carnet, or maybe another. I can't think of maybe a PLA, somebody like that, a later French filmmaker, or maybe a later Chabrol like Le Cérémonie. I think as far as predictions, they're a little tougher. So one thing that Criterion did so well is they teased every month with a newsletter clue that there was going to be an announcement. So I think that with that, we without those, we don't have as much insight into what's coming. We do know that Ghost Dog, Wave of the Samurai is coming because Criterion sent an email about that. And again, I already mentioned that there's a lot of rumors that the Fellini box set will come, although I think most people expect that'll be around November. I mean, that's when the Bergman box set was announced. As far as October, there's usually going to be at least one or two horror films. And I think if they hadn't just announced the Elephant Man, I might think that maybe one of those darker David Lynch films, maybe Inland Empire, might be announced. I don't know if I call it horror, kind of borderline art horror a little bit. It's to some it is. So yeah, I think maybe Cronenberg Crash, which is one I haven't seen, but it's one I've been wanting to see. I know it's on. I think it's on the Laserdisc and
yes,
DVD. Is that right?
It was a Laserdisc, yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to dig up some. There, again, we mentioned Kurosawa. They haven't put out a Kurosawa in a very long time, just because there's only so many films to put out. But I think Redbeard is one that could use an upgrade. I think that was DVD, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right.
And then Basala, sort of a Russian, I guess it's a Russian collaboration. And yeah, I'd always welcome more Ozu. I'm going to be happy with whatever they put out. So I'm always happy with more classic Hollywood. Maybe Winchester 73. I don't know, off the top of my head. Not a prediction, more of a wish list. But The Searchers would be great. I know that's probably a very, very complicated film nowadays. Gone with the Wind is not happening. I'm pretty sure of that.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll see.
Yes, we will, and it'll be hopefully on or around the 15th of this month, and as soon as possible. And at that time, I will look forward. Will you be doing a reaction podcast episode to that, or do you plan to do something like that?
That's the one with David and Trevor.
Okay.
So we'll record the following weekend, so we won't do an immediate reaction. We were doing some of those, and yeah, maybe that's something we need to figure out a way to do. I know you do very good reaction videos too, so please.
Not as good as yours. Yours are the best, my friend. Really, well, really, they are. They're fantastic.
I said, your humility is second to none.
Yours are great. I recommend them wholeheartedly. They're really great, and I love the sort of the instant reaction. That's really great, and especially with you, with David Blakesley and Trevor Barrett, you're going to have a great conversation there. It's going to be. I'm looking forward to that very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, and maybe I'll try to do an immediate one, because I think if I remember right, today's the 7th, so I think the 15th will be early in the week. So maybe we'll try to do something. No, thanks for the idea.
Please, please. Again, I look forward to that very much. That's one of many great things, many great things that that you do with your work. So, thank you so much for that. And so, just to maybe we can start to bring this home, as it were, because I know you have plans as well. So, I was wondering, just as a
My
way
bike is almost done.
Thank you so much for just giving us your insight. As always, I thought that was really great, and also I know that many people value this. I know I do, because it's
Well,
you've mentioned a lot of things here. You know, for instance, I didn't quite think about the ramifications of the current health crisis and the possibilities or the rumored Fellini set could be delayed, and so you've given me some things to think about. So.
Speculation.
Yeah, I understand.
Hopefully not. Hopefully
Yeah.
everything is done.
Yeah.
And hopefully it happened. It's still a rumor, so we don't know. We could be. I think a lot of us. In fact, one person made a pretty bold projection or prediction about Spy 1000 that didn't work out. He thought it was going to be Citizen Kane, turned out to be Godzilla. So we don't know everything, and that's one thing that they do a good job of guarding their secrets. So.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what they have to announce between now and the end of the year. That's for sure. But so Aaron, so thank you so much. And so one more time, please, please let everyone know where they can find you, and if there's anything in the works that you want to share with us, anything you want to say that's coming up, please feel free. So Aaron, where can people find you?
Thank you. Well, I probably spend most of my time in the Criterion Now Facebook group, which is, I think I'm pretty proud of how that community has come about. I think we're about 2,500 members there. You're one of them, and I love when you post there. It's it's somewhat regularly, but it's always welcome. You're anything you ever post. It could be every show, and you're more than welcome. I do have a Twitter of AWest505 that I tweet occasionally, not too much, so that's not the best place to find me. I do have a letterbox, which is DSNT is my letterbox. But yeah, mostly listen to the shows, support CriterionCast, support all of the friendly shows that I think you're going to link to a few of them that were part of the 25th Frame. So The Complete, Good Times, Great Movies, Film Baby Film, Criterion Channel Surfing. I'm probably forgetting some. In fact, at one point you had a show in the works that I don't think worked out, but it was going to be amazing.
Well, yeah, but you never say never. So I'm always open to some new ideas.
Well, I will be glad to help you with that if you need some tips. So I won't share the topic of that show, but it was going to be some smashing. One of the best shows on the network if it happens. So
we'll see what happens going forward. So, but anyway, thank you so much for this, and all the information will be in below. So anyone who's interested, please feel free to check out some of the sites and the sources of information and where to find Aaron and his show Criterion Now, and also the other outlets that he has online. So, so thank you so much, Aaron West. You've been so gracious with your time and your insights, and so I really appreciate this. I know you're busy, so thank you so much for your time, my friend.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So, actually, it's a thrill to talk to you. Next time, I can't wait for you to come on my show, and we'll have more of a dialogue about. Well, not that we haven't had that here, but I look forward to some digging into some film and talking about what we love.
Oh yes, I look forward to that very much.
My friend.
Yes, thank you, and and most importantly, just continue to be well and stay safe during these times.
Yes, and to everybody else, please wear a mask. It's not political. Just be safe, take care of yourself, and watch out for others, and we'll get through this. The safer we are now, the better we are. Say, hopefully weeks, months, years from now. So we'll get through this.
Yes. Well said, my friend. Thank you so much. So anyway, thank you so much for your time, and we will talk very soon. So once again, cheers from Tokyo. Thank you so much.
Cheers from Colombia. Take care, Daisuke.
You too.